Superstars and franchise players, those are the guys you want on your team. I mean, I think there's literally fans of 29 other teams in the league that would get their arm chopped off. I'm not exaggerating, would have their arm taken off to have Stephen Curry on their team. Now, would I? Well, no, I'm not crazy, but still, there are fans of other teams that would do that, and while they're at it, they'd probably lose their foot to have Klay Thompson. And maybe like their toe to have Draymond too. I love Draymond, but I don't think everyone else has quite the same affiliation, the affection for him as a player. But they would lose body parts to have Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson on their respective teams. That's just how good they are. And with that in mind, you have to always be thinking not just about how you can compete when you have a Steph Curry, but how you can win a championship. Competing isn't good enough when you have someone who has proven he can take you to the promised land and has proven that he is still just as good as ever, if not better right now. With that in mind, the Warriors front office, they're kind of working like a person with a split personality. They have one side of their personality telling them, just take the right option regardless. Do what's best. Build through the draft. How did you get to this position where you have Steph Curry, Draymond, and Klay? You got to this position through drafting and smart decisions and through development. Continue to do that, and maybe after Steph retires, you'll have a nice future to build with. And then you have the other side, which is probably most of the fans as well, and the other side of your personality, which is telling you, you have Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, arguably the greatest point guard of all time, arguably the best player in the league, you name it, all of those things. He's that good. You have him in the prime of his career right now. You build with him. You do everything possible to get him to the promised land, to get him a championship level team. I don't care if you have to sacrifice your entire future for the next 10 years. You do that for the next 3 or 4 years of Stephen Curry in his prime. That's the other side of things. So it's a little bit of a different opinion, but that's what you get when you have Steph Curry, because there isn't going to be another Steph walk through the door. Oh, hey, I'm the greatest shooter of all time. I'm that good. I'm Steph. I can give you 45% from three, average 30 points a game, lead you to championships, win MVPs. No, they don't just walk through the door like casually. And again, with that in mind, do you want to make the decision to scrap your future, to scrap the potential of the 7th, the 14th, James Wiseman, and probably not Jordan Poole, but those kind of picks and those assets for someone who can help you win now? Or do you want to try and bridge the gap for after Steph retires? That's the decision the Golden State Warriors have to make, and it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one, which I want to talk about in this video. Now, before I do that, if you're new to the channel, dropping a like on the video helps out a ton. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. That would be much appreciated. But let's not waste any time. Let's talk about the Warriors' options, because I don't think they have 2 options like I kind of talked about there. I think there's 3 options. Let's be real, there's 3 options. One option is the one where through the draft, they have the 7th pick, the 14th pick, they picked Wiseman in last year's draft, they continue to take the player they think is the best available, they think has the most potential, who can be the best in the long run, and they do that. Whether that is someone who's going to be raw for the next couple of years, but they think could turn into be an all-star level player they have really, really high raps on, then they're going to do that. That is one option. You then have the other option, which is the one I alluded to, which is obviously just scrapping all the picks and trying to formulate a trade which can get you someone who is going to help them immediately, which is easier said than done, because it's not like there's just someone, oh, hey, I'm going to help you win a championship immediately. That guy's just not on the trade market for nothing. There's a reason it's not easy to be a general manager. And then you have the one which I think is a more realistic approach, where you use the picks or whatever, you use one of the 2 picks, however many you need to use, but you use it on players that are going to help you win now. Because if we've seen anything over the last few years, if you draft well, if you make the right decisions, if you get players that have proven in college that they're going to come into the NBA and provide an impact from day one, then there's absolutely no reason to believe you couldn't use those picks on guys who are going to come in straight away and help your team. The likes of a Tyrese Halliburton, the likes of a Sadiq Bey, all of these guys, Donovan Mitchell, the names go on and on. You don't need me to list everyone. That's the one that's probably the most realistic option, where you have a little bit of the best of both worlds. Now, in terms of talking about those options, the Warriors do have 2 chances. That is something that is promising for them. They do have 2 chances to make it right this year. And I think when we talk about the picks, obviously it's easy to just throw out names and say, oh, they should trade him straight away. They should help because they got Klay coming back, Draymond, Steph. And while I am absolutely not against trading away some of the future to build around a generational talent while he's still in his prime, I have confidence in Klay coming back. But the reality is, I'm confident, not certain. And you want to see at least what Clay will be before you trade away those picks, because to be honest, you're going to get back a worse return, if you know what I mean. Like, you're not going to get the value because teams know what you're trying to do. Teams know that you want to compete. Teams know that if you were to trade away those picks, it would mean you're kind of desperate to get someone who can help you win now, and therefore they would ask for picks that are probably worth more than the player you're getting back, which is why you need to be certain when you pull the trigger on this trade, and Klay Thompson being at 100% health and being ready to come back as the second option on a championship team is the kind of certainty you need to have. With that being said, before I even talk about the picks, I want to talk about the pick from last year, the second overall pick, James Wiseman. He got a bit of a bad rap. He didn't have a great season. It wasn't a great rookie season at all, but we have to put something into context. This was someone who played barely any games in Memphis. Then he comes to the Warriors. Obviously, there was a limited preseason. There was a limited offseason for these rookies. And him in particular, he was in restrictions for quite a while. And I think he only got like a week of practice before he came into the team. He comes into a different system, a new team where they obviously run quite a few different things that isn't that easy for a center to adjust to, a rookie center at that, someone who's still 19 at the time. They didn't run a ton of pick and rolls for him. They didn't exactly make it particularly easy on Wiseman to get his feet under him. And he was obviously working with guys like Steph, Draymond, who are pretty hard to operate with if you're a rookie center and you don't know where to be, if you don't know what to do in a system that is unique to what you've played in. I think we have to keep that all under mind, and we have to consider that this is someone who right now, his trade value is not high. What's the point in really selling him now? Like, what can you get for James Wiseman right now? Another draft pick? Is that what you could get? Another draft pick? Another young player that might help you a bit more now? Maybe, but like, you're most likely getting something that is far worse than you could get if he has another promising season next year, or just in general, you could just keep him if he has another promising season next year. I want to see him now. Obviously, he's injured right now, but I want to see him with a full preseason, working with Draymond Green, working with Stephen Curry, recognizing what he needs to do, running more pick and rolls, just getting his feet under him, and at least get a chance to see what he can be before just shipping him off. Because right now, you're not getting back the return that you would need to make it worthwhile. And then looking at other players, Jordan Poole is someone who I think we need to talk about as well in terms of young players on this roster, because he's probably the most untouchable, which is crazy to say considering when he was drafted just a couple of years ago, everyone was like, oh, this is a reach, this is a terrible pick. And then after a few games into that season, he struggled. He was in the G League earlier this season, and I actually, funnily enough, saw quite a few of his G League highlights and games and footage before he came up, and I saw someone who was really developing as a passer. His playmaking instincts are definitely there. His on-ball creation is definitely there. I mean, as a Warriors player, towards the end of the season, averaging like 18 points a game over the last 10 games, you saw his scoring. He's definitely going to be able to score. There's no questions about that. But in terms of his playmaking, there is upside for him to be a playmaker. And that upside could lead to him being the backup point guard, which is important when we consider players that they could potentially draft with the 7th and the 14th overall pick. So ultimately, how much faith the Warriors have in him being either a backup point guard or they choose to have him as a backup shooting guard will probably determine a lot in terms of who they pick in this year's draft. And we may as well just talk about this year's draft. Obviously, with the team, you don't really need to say it, but Steph, Clay, Wiggins, and Dre. Those are 4 guys that are locked in, that are going to be there. Looney has a player option. He might come back, he might not. James Wiseman, of course, that could be the rotation. You have guys like that. Paul locked in as well. JTA, you're probably getting back Justinian Jessup as well. You've got guys that'll make out that rotation, and I think what you see there is a missing link, and that is the guard/wing depth that is really lacking. You don't want Michael Mulder playing minutes. Damian Lee, he's okay, but come a playoff setting, you're not really going to want Damian Lee playing too many minutes. You want someone who can come in from day one and hopefully help you. And the guy who might make the most sense for the Warriors at 7 isn't someone who's actually 22 or 23. It's Moses Moody, who at 19 is a mature guy. He's someone that from day one, he's got a shooting touch, he can play both ends of the floor, he's 6'5", he's got length, he's got versatility, he'll come off the bench, he's not going to be asked to do too much, but he's going to be able to do what he's asked to do. He's going to be able to shoot, he's going to be able to score, he's going to be able to not really create a ton, he's not really a playmaker, which is why I said it's important to know what you're getting with Jordan Poole. You're still going to have some playmaking with JTA. Obviously, Draymond and Steph are going to split some minutes. Klay Thompson, it's not going to be all on Jordan Poole, but you're going to need him to create a lot because Moses Moody is more of a scorer. He's more of a two-way player. But in general, he's that guy that you think could come in. He's just smooth. He's silky. He's the kind of guy that, although he's 19, you look at a team that's ready to contend and you think he could actually help this team from day one, and then going forward, he could be one of the guys to bridge the gap. So the best of both worlds with Moody, and then someone else who's more mature is Davion Mitchell. This is if you don't have as much faith in Paul and you want to get a backup point guard to come off the bench. Mitchell shot 44% from three. He's a playmaker. Defensively, he's seen as the best guard in the draft. From a defensive standpoint, he obviously won a championship, so he's got experience. I think his shot is a little bit questionable. He only shot just over 60% from the line, and his three-point shooting also took a huge jump. So is it sustainable? I don't exactly know, but he provides playmaking, he provides scoring, he provides winning, like he won, so that helps as well, and he's obviously an elite defender. All of those things that you're not going to mind. But this is a team that I think, I didn't even mention before, but this is a team that was already an elite defense. So you're not desperate for defenders. Obviously you want defenders like this. You don't want defensive liabilities, but you're not desperate to get someone who's going to come in and be an absolute defensive hound. You want some scoring. This is a team that struggled offensively. Clay's going to come in regardless of what he is. He's going to help this team there. Steph, obviously, Draymond. Like, you've got enough offense to be okay, but you want to take that next step. And I think Moses Moody might be the guy that could help them there. Davion Mitchell is not a bad pick at all either. He's more experienced. He's probably even more NBA ready than Moody right now. And then looking at the 14th pick, and I think Corey Kispert and Chris Duarte are both guys that are mature. They're both wings. They both can shoot the lights out. They're not going to struggle shooting the ball. They can defend as well. They're not defensive liabilities. They're going to come off the bench, and you know what you're going to get. You're going to get spacing. You're going to get guys who are smart enough to move to the right places, that can catch and shoot, that can come off screens. And I think it's important to note as well that we've seen guys like Jordan Poole. We've seen these guys with the way the Warriors like to operate. If you're a guy who can shoot off movement and come off screens and has that IQ as an off-ball mover, you're really going to suit this Warriors team, and you might get more opportunity than you otherwise would. So having someone like a Chris Duarte or a Corey Kispert come in, I think would be my ideal option in terms of coming off the bench. It doesn't have to be one of those guys, but just someone who's ready to go. You need to get at least one player in this draft that is ready to go, unless you're absolutely hellbent on someone like a Keon Johnson being just a star going forward. It's not rocket science, but adding some wing depth is what I would be looking to do. And just in general, you've got Justinian Jessup will come back. There are a few other options that I didn't mention. There's the potential they could trade up in the draft. It's probably not the highest potential, but like a Jalen Green could come in, and he could really come in and help them off the bench as a spark plug. James Wiseman's going to improve. Jordan Poole's going to improve. JTA's going to improve. All of these guys are going to improve. You just need to get one of those guys to be a high-end role player coming off the bench, and I think that's what I want to see from the Warriors in this draft. If they trade the picks for someone who can be a star, then go ahead. But I don't see that being an easy option, and I also want to see Clay come back before I get rid of all of my future assets to try and build around a team that we don't know what the second option is going to be like yet. Anyways, that's my thought on the Warriors situation. They're in a good situation. Just get Steph the help he needs. Whether that's through the draft, free agency, trades, doesn't matter. Get it done. Steph Curry deserves to be on another championship level team. He's just that good.